All right, ladies, it is 3:45, and so we are ready to start our next session. I hope you all have been following for the day. Hope you have been enjoying it thus far. We've had some amazing keynote speakers, as well as our panel discussions have been awesome. Hopefully everyone has been writing down their takeaways, things that they need to start and put in practice starting next week or whenever they see fit. So now we are going to start with Women of Branding, and we have our moderator, which is Carla George, and we have our panelists, which are Nikki Fagan, Erica Bradshaw, Jody Covington, and looking forward to hearing what these ladies have to say. So take it away, ladies.
Thank you, Carlina, and welcome everyone to the Women in Branding panel. I have enjoyed my day, Carlina. Yes, I have. Everyone has been great. It's been very informative, as this panel will be as well. I am your moderator, Carla George, and I have curated the brand Push Into Purpose, where we empower busy women of faith to launch their ideas so that they can turn their purpose into profit. And I want to introduce these beautiful women to you. I would love for them to introduce themselves and, of course, introduce their brand so that we can get to know them a bit better. And we'll start with you, Jody.
Hi, my name is Jody Covington. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited about this conversation. So a little bit about me. I own a few different businesses, one in which is JD Lewis Group, which is a public relations and marketing company. We also do events, branding, rebranding, and all kind of falls under the same remit, as the ladies will say here. I also own my own telecommunications company called Covington Telecom Solutions. And I have done major events globally. One that originally started in Bermuda was the Uber Soca Cruise. So I do the operations and branding, marketing for that venture. I'm a mother of some amazing girls, Samira, my stepdaughter, who is 20, Amina, who is 17, and Amelia, who is 13. And I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, actually, Covington, Georgia. I moved here because it's named Covington. I moved from Bermuda in 2017, but I'm always back on island. I still have clients on island, and I'm just excited to be here today. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Jody. Nikki.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nikki Fagan of Nikki Fagan Brand Strategy, formerly known as the Brand Lion here in Bermuda. I am also a mommy to a unicornical 5-year-old named Logan Gray. And thank you so much, Kalina and Carla and the BEDC for inviting me to sit on this panel with such amazing women, most of which I know already, and equally for the opportunity to share with all of you what it is that I really love to do. And I can talk about branding forever. So currently I serve women and a few brave men who are ready to start a business or in some cases restart a business, but founded on the things that they really love to do instead of simply building a business on their education or their skills, a gap in the market, et cetera. And that's because entrepreneurship, you will learn, or you may already have learned, is not this well-paved road, right? So there are lumps and bumps everywhere. And what I do know from my experience in the last 20 plus years is that the best way to create the sustainability that you need for the journey is to build your business around something that you're passionate about. So that's where my genius comes in. I take people through the process of building business, carving out their next steps for a business that centers on their why. That's me.
Love it, love it. Welcome, Nikki. And Erica.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually here in Los Angeles, so I'm probably the furthest away. If those of you who are familiar with LA, I'm in Pacific Palisades, which is right between Santa Monica and Malibu. So from one coast to where you all are. I am a brand strategist, designer, and builder. I've been doing it for 19 years. I just celebrated my 19th anniversary of working for myself. And just like all of us here, I really enjoy supporting women entrepreneurs, especially because I love working with women, because I find that whenever we do something, we take something on, we have a bigger vision about it, and we're really thinking about how we can help us all and do what we do best for the good of all. So that's what I'm about. I've been doing this, as I said, for 19 years. I'm actually launching a new company in 2022 to support women-led positive businesses. So I'm going to be developing a directory of women-led positive businesses. And lastly, I have an online course, an extensive online course I just launched earlier this year called Brand Building Foundations. And that really helps with taking anyone who wants to self-guide through the process of brand strategy, as well as how to build out your initial brand asset. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yep, it's great to have you, Erica.
Oh, I should mention, I'm sorry, I'm also a mom. I'm also a mom. Oh, my poor daughter, she's 12, and I'm actually a co-parent. So I'm a single mom 50% of the time.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you so much. Now, before we get into the meat of this discussion, I think it's important that we lay the foundation and define what branding is and what a brand is. So we may think that it's a logo, right? Or it may be our color scheme, or we ensure that our packaging is great and that our social media is on point. But I'm sure that it goes a lot deeper than that. And Nikki, I would love for you to just start it off and just give us some pointers and things that we should think about when we go into branding.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start from my expertise. My expertise is design, and I'm a creative director and art director by trade. And so this may sound strange for me to say, but it's something that I say with regularity. And what the brand is not simply your logo or your website or all of the things that are, I like to call them trinkets, because the brand is so much deeper than that, right? You are the brand. You are the brand, and the brand is you. And once you get to that essence of truly who you are, what you'd like to impart into the brand, what you'd like to impart into the world, then you have a brand, right? Because really, I work with women who, I send them out into the world before we even do the logo work. I send them out into the world before they have a website. So does that mean they don't have a brand? They absolutely do have a brand. The brand is, they stand on the brand. So that's my input of what a brand is, which kind of sits on the opposite side of my designer skill set.
Thank you. And Erica, could you just add to that as well? How would you define branding?
Yeah, so I think a favorite brand guru of mine, Marty Neumeier, he says that it's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. So all of that is so key and so important, all those foundational steps that you need to go through before you develop what those visual assets are. It's all about, again, like who you are at the core of your brand. And what I call it your brand essentials, your 4 Ps. You have to know your people, your purpose, your positioning, and your personality. And with that, then you can inform like all those essential assets, as we said. Now, one important piece is in all of this, which I'm sure Jody can talk a lot about, is that it's so much more than just what we're putting out into the world, right? It's also what other people are saying about us. And so we want, with us being intentional about what we're putting out and knowing what we're about, then it allows us to have a little more control over the narrative of what's out there. Because at the end of the day, we want to look back and say, okay, what do we want to be remembered for? What's the impact that we want to have? And so there's so many little pieces that involves, which I'm sure Jody can expand upon as well.
So it's interesting. Obviously, there's no, both the ladies said it very well. What I would add is that, when you think about a brand, some people do just think about the logo and the look and feel of it, the bags and these types of things. And even like, how are you going to do your social media and how that social media flow? 1 week I want to do a quote, the next week I want to do an image, the next week I want to do a video. That all kind of, it kind of all goes with branding, the way that the outside world looks and views your product, service, or business. But it goes a step farther to even your internal communications. How do you want the community when they walk in that building to feel? Do you want them to feel excited? You know, you compare certain brands, like you have the Google. If you go into the Google office, it's bright and colorful. So even the staff understands the culture and the dynamic of that particular business. So it goes a step further than what the outside views as your business, but also your internal workers. If it's just you by yourself, you know, when you walk in your office, how do you want to feel? You know, that also kind of from a psychological standpoint manifests on the outside when people view your business from the outside. So branding is such an amazing concept to me because as Nikki indicated, it's so much more. And coming up with a brand, I will say this, even with like Uber Soca Cruise, you know, we had our initial branding year one, and, you know, which was the logo. I think we had a little slogan, but it wasn't until year two that we actually was like, wow, we want this to feel like an experience beyond the music. This is more than just music. It's more than just soca music. It is an experience. So that became the slogan. And so everything that we did from a branding perspective, we wanted it to be beyond music. So we didn't necessarily focus on one thing. We focused on the experience as a whole. And so that branding actually guided even some of the events and things that we did, because we wanted it to always be larger than life. So that's my contribution to that question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and you bring up such a good point. It's the experiences that we're creating that allow our audiences, right, to experience our brand. So just as you said, so even that internal brand piece and making sure that everybody in your internal team understands what you're about, and they're not going to know unless you do this foundational work. But all of that, even the person who's answering the phone, right, that is a form of branding, and that's a touch point. So we want to consider, again, like, what is it that we're actually putting out into the world, which includes, just as you said, you walk into an office. What are those colors? What do they feel like? What kind of feedback are they getting? Was all of those impressions essentially form the whole of your brand. And so again, we want to have control over what those impressions are, but you got to start with that strategic work and the foundational work first.
And it's ever growing. I'm sorry. It's ever growing. It's ever changing. This is where we get into rebrand. I know we're going to talk about that a little later, but just because you start somewhere doesn't mean you have to end somewhere. You may get into your, 6 months or 8 months or a year, 2 down the line and be like, man, this is really not the look and feel I'm feeling anymore. I know when I first started JD Lewis Group, my logo was red and white. And then after a few years, oddly enough, I think Nikki says she's been, 20 plus years. Erica's hitting 19 years. I'm hitting 10 years this upcoming year. And over the last 2 years, I'm like, I don't like this color logo anymore. I just feel like it doesn't really, it's not me anymore. I want something more, business, I want a gray or a blue. So you can change it, and so it is ever changing. It does require research. It does require focus groups. Some of us don't have the expertise to define. This is why Nikki and other individuals that are on the creative side of things come in handy, because they can take you through those developmental creative processes to really define what represents your specific brand.
I love that. And I love that you all kind of just started out with the similar notion that it's the foundation. It is who you are, right? And to do the research, and you are your brand, and your brand is you. Because when you get into that, then you start to attract, your clientele and your tribe when you are authentically you, right? And you're not being somebody else. So you want to attract the right people to your brand and to your business, which kind of leads me to our next question, which is being in a small community. You would think that you would stand out more because you are in a small community, right? But what you tend to find is that you engage and encounter your peers in the industry more frequently, probably more frequently than you would like, and you start to see them as your competition. So how can you create brand awareness that makes you stand out? But also, ladies, I want you to also answer the question, how can you leverage that opportunity when you do encounter your peers and leverage that relationship so that you can expand your brand awareness? And, anybody could take this first. Jody.
It was a loaded question that I think goes so many different directions, right? And being in a small community and standing out is I guess it can be challenging, but I also don't think maybe challenging is the right word, because although it's a small community and you may have multiple people doing very similar things, no one in essence can do it like you. And so this is a part of that journey as well, and that creativity. When I was living in Bermuda, there we had the brand Lion, which is now I see being rebranded. We had myself and maybe one or two other major companies, I think, alone that were doing, marketing PR work. And I think we all were able to successfully carve out our spaces. And I never felt in competition like with Nikki on Island. And Nikki and I, we ran in the same circles, and I even had to go to Nikki at one point in time to vent and be like, girl, I'm just overwhelmed and stressed out. You remember, Nikki? So I think it's about understanding what you do and what you do well. And you will have competition, but competition is good because it helps bring out, your creativity and your strengths. If you sell cookies and the next person sells cookies, and even the cookies may taste the same, but the presentation of that cookie may be different. The way that you go to the next event and set up may be different. You may give your customer a gift every time they purchase a cookie. You may create a loyalty program. So although you have a similar product that even may taste the same, may even look the same, maybe do the same thing, the way that you present that product, which comes with the branding and the marketing part of it, can be very different and really set you apart from the rest. So that's my contribution to the first part of the question, because the second one, it was a lot. So I'm going to wait for someone to answer that one because I can't remember exactly what it was.
I can jump in. Here in Bermuda, we are the land of popcorn. And so everybody and their auntie sells popcorn in this country. And so, and then, no offense to popcorn sellers. And then, gift boxes. Now everyone sells gift boxes and cake and cupcakes. Everyone, it does not take much here for everyone to sell the same thing in a very small proximity. So standing out may seem like it would be impossible, when in actuality, we use every single one of those brands. And I hope that they recognize that they're not in competition with each other, because they all offer something very unique. And I can say that because right now, if I go into Warwick Pharmacy that's near my house, there's probably 6 different popcorn brands, local popcorn brands on the shelves. So that tells me that there's enough demand in the market for there to be a plethora of sameness, it would seem, in the market. So just to piggyback on what Jody said, it really just matters who you are, who you authentically present yourself as, and even in a crowded space, you can still thrive.
Can I just say something? I just want to show you something about the popcorn thing, because I order my popcorn from home and I ship it here.
Yes,
I hide it from my kids.
I had no idea. That's fantastic.
I literally order from Bermuda, and I have 50 bags up there.
So I'm in LA, which is a huge area, but I actually grew up in Hawaii, which is quite small. So also I'm an island girl. But I just wanted to say that absolutely, just as they were saying, like if you do know what you're about, right? Who you're doing it for, why you're doing it, how you're doing it uniquely, how you're doing it authentically, as I said, those 4 Ps, then you don't need to worry so much about what everybody else is doing, because you are uniquely and authentically you, which is going to excite you. It's going to emotionally connect you with your brand and what you're doing. It's going to emotionally connect you with those who are aligned with you, your audiences. So in that way, I also want to mention that I think us women, and this is a big part of what I talk about too, we have a unique opportunity to really kind of take back control of the language of business, right? It's very masculine. It's very aggressive. You think about target, execute, strategy, and competition is another one. And I think just as Jody and Nikki were saying, like, I always try to think of it as peers. We're all peers. We do similar work, but we know what we're about. We know that we're doing this again for the good of all. And so we're just here to support all of you. And just like when you look at your peers and what they're doing, there are so many opportunities for collaboration, right? And so looking to your small community for those opportunities and inviting each other, because you're all doing it to boost everybody else up and to empower one another. And then I would say, in terms of maybe part of your second question, the brand awareness is extending beyond your small communities. I'm actually a part of a lot of little communities. So I am a part of several professional moms groups. Hey Mama is one of them. There's another one based out of London that's for women, Albright. So all of these have virtual communities that you can join and be a part of. Female Founder Collective, I think, is a huge one. So in doing that, you get connected with a lot of women outside of your small community. You have opportunities to learn because they're always doing virtual events, et cetera. You have the opportunity to contribute, which also boosts your brand awareness. And also, on my website, and you should have it on your website too, what are the groups that you belong to? Like, how do you leverage those networks to show and give credibility to your own brand by saying, hey, I'm a part of these various groups? Because you never know who you may come across that's a part of that same group, and like, oh, you have that connection.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that was the second part of the question, Joe, that you asked earlier. It was like, how do we leverage those relationships? Because again, yeah, they're not our competition. There's so many ways that we can connect and collaborate and just encourage each other and lift each other's business up, our brand up in whichever way. And we're doing it right now, right? Through this summit, through this conference, we're getting our expertise out there via a conference, and anybody here can host that. I host a summit once a year, and I bring in other people who are in the same industry as me and make sure that their voice gets out there and we get exposure to each other's platforms. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's very key, especially when we are in a small community, so that we can connect better with our peers, like you say, Erica, and rather than look at them as our competition. Right. So in the last couple of years, of course, we have been shocked. We have had to learn how to do business differently. We have had to learn how to pivot, how to expand, how to adapt. And to be honest, I can say personally, in the last 2 months, it's been difficult for me to just be out there again. I have feeling like I've been detached from social media. And to be honest, just being on this entrepreneur journey, it gets tough. We have our ebbs and flows. Sometimes you just really don't feel like it, right? So how can we stay motivated when we go through those seasons? And how can we keep our creative juices flowing when, to be honest, it just isn't there sometimes? Erica, could you just start us off with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of, a big part, we were talking about this the other day, those of us who've been doing this for a really long time, like you constantly have to pivot and flow depending on how you're feeling, looking externally what's out there and looking internally of what's within you. And so I think it's really important to remember that it is a journey, it is a flow. How to stay motivated is really about, again, knowing what you're about, knowing who you're doing this for and why you're doing it, because that should always motivate you. So even when those little pieces, like, oh, my post didn't get as many likes as I wanted, or those little pieces that we get affected by, or the larger pieces when there's a major global pandemic, you have the opportunity to always go back to that foundation and remember, why am I doing this in the first place? Again, what is the legacy that I want to leave behind? What is the brand legacy that I want to leave behind? And once you know that, it helps you align back to your path and back to that ebb and flow journey. And in terms of getting your creative juices flowing, I think it's really important to always come from a place of gratitude, right? So when you start to feel frustrated and there's all these things happening around you, and again, if you really know what you're about, you know who you are at your core, being in the present moment, understanding, okay, it's starting from the, the basics of like, I am so grateful that my family is healthy, or whatever it is, that I find helps with getting you out of those blocks, out of the stuckness that we can get ourselves kind of wrapped in and frustrated. And we're just kind of the rat on the wheel, because it elevates you from a place of victimhood or that victim mentality or the lack mentality, when you can start to have gratitude and recognize the abundance that you already have in your life. So I could go on and on about it, and I don't want to take up too much time on it, but for me, that really works. Meditating, having a journal, just being in the present moment, recognizing what you already have, knowing who you are at your core, and getting reconnected with that to help align you back on your path.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Jody, you want to add to that?
It's such a personal question, right? Because what would work for Erica something may be different for me, which would be different for Nikki, right? So it's such a personal question that kind of dives into almost like how you cope with life stressors and how you can motivate. Some people, some people run, some people listen to music, some people pray. I think so for me personally, when I go through these slums, I have a good circle of friends. So my motivation, the thing that kind of keeps me going is my circle. I have been very deliberate and intentional on creating a circle of women and men that I can reach out to when I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling unproductive. I am feeling like it's just too much going on right now. I have a team of people that I can reach out to. And I'll give you a perfect example, being a mom doing this. My daughter's a senior in high school, and I just saw all of my other friends who had seniors. They were posting all these beautiful senior pictures of their daughters. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to do senior pictures for Amina. And it was so overwhelming because our firm is also representing the Mia Marcano family, which is the young girl that unfortunately was killed in Orlando. So over the past 2-3 months, we have been dealing with that heavily in and out of Florida, managing all the media on the Breakfast Club and having to perform, at such a high level from a PR and spokesperson standpoint. It mentally consumed me. And I felt like I was dropping so many other balls in other areas, even with other clients and my children and the whole 9 yards. And I remember having a complete meltdown and calling my team. And I was like, listen, they're like, what do you need? I said, just my daughter. If I can just get her photo shoot organized, I feel like that'll make me feel better. Like I can just breathe because we need to get that done. And one friend called locked in a photographer for me. The other friend locked in a venue. The other one did this, then the third, other one scheduled her hair appointment and makeup. And my team, my group pulled it together for me. So I think that for me personally, it's having that great team, that great circle of friends that help keep me motivated, energized, remind me who I am, remind me the things that I've done. I have a friend named Jasmine. She's always like, do you know who you are? You are the this, that, and third. And I love it because that's what keeps me motivated and reminds me why I'm doing this. So that's what I do.
I love that. I think more of us need that, a team and a circle around us. In one of the previous panels, they were talking about having an entrepreneurial tribe. And it's so key that we don't isolate ourselves on this journey and put ourselves in silos, because we can miss that key factor when our personal life crosses over into our business life. And how do you handle it without really going through that meltdown? So thank you for sharing that, Jody, because I think what you're going through now is definitely important that you have that circle around you. Nikki, did you want to add anything?
I know for me, when I'm going through periods of stock, and I went through a period of stock at some point, I don't know, we're on year 44 of the pandemic. I don't know where we're at, but like at some point early on in the pandemic, I went through a period where I was like, I've been doing this for 15 years, and yeah, I hate it. I hate it. And so what that period of stuckness required from me was stillness, was getting really, really quiet, getting rid of anything that would be a distraction from being able to just have some time to myself and think. And so stillness was where it started. And that gave me enough time and space in my head to be able to then find resources that could actually put me back to where I needed to be and put me in a position of power again. So for me, stillness was what I used to start the unstuckness process. But one of the questions I really love is to get unstuck. If you had no limitations in time, money, resources, what would you be doing? And moving back into that space, a space where you can have everything that you want, a space that you can, everything that you can imagine you can have, that's a great space to dream from and then pivot. So that's how I get unstuck.
And what you said about put yourself in a position of power, I love that. To regroup, be still, so that you can get back in that position of power. I love that, Nikki. If anybody wants to tweet that, I think you should.
that's and what it is, Nikki. It's so interesting because my first career was in mental health and counseling. And what you just, that question you asked in that career, we actually called it our miracle question, where we used to tell clients, if you could wake up tomorrow and everything be perfect and the way you want it to be, what does that look like? And you actually state exactly what that looks like. And it helps you start coming up with solutions or even the vision of where you want to be, and then working on that strategy of how to get there. So you do exactly what you do is actually a mental health a strategy.
It is.
It certainly felt like mental health.
Yeah.
Right. And they say that like depression is actually your depressing expression. And because we're already putting a bunch of blocks on what we want, because we think we can't have it or we don't deserve it or this and that and this and that. So asking that question, removing all those blocks, helps you get to that place of what you really truly desire, what you really want. And again, we can, we've talked about this a lot, but that is so essential to emotionally connecting you to your brand and to your purpose and to your why, which is going to be your fuel and your motivation to keep you moving forward, man, because sometimes it can be a slog.
Mm-hmm. So you all have mentioned that you've been in this business for quite some time, and I've heard a couple of you say that you've gone through rebranding for various reasons. As we know, one of the largest social media platforms just completed a whole rebranding project. Facebook is now known as Meta. You would have seen that on your WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you use. And they say they did it because, they wanted to be the lead in the 3D world, which is metaverse. So basically it's a 3D version of the internet. So do not be surprised, ladies, in the next 5 years, we will be gathering in this conference via a hologram. Okay, so watch that space. Mm-hmm. But controversially, some people are saying that they rebranded because they wanted to detach themselves from the negative press that they have been receiving. So there are different reasons why people may go into rebranding. They stick by the fact that, they are evolving and they want their brand to evolve as they are. So how do you know when is the right time to make a shift in your business, right? And when it is the right time to rebrand, which a couple of you have done. So when's the right time to make that shift in your business? When's the right time to rebrand? And what are the pros and cons around that? And, Nikki, you can start off.
So I can speak from my point of view since I've just done it. I, strangely enough, although I was always Nikki Fagan of the Brand Lion, I was more so the Brand Lion. And when I found myself in that period of stuckness, what I was becoming more and more cognizant of was the fact that the brand lion was bigger than me, which meant that I could hide behind the brand lion. And so on my evolution and on my journey, what I decided was that I didn't want to hide anymore. And in order to not hide, I had to be Nikki Fagan. And so when I decided to rebrand, I decided to use my own name, which seems like so easy, right? Super simple. But I had stood behind a company for X amount of years. And, I almost forgot that I had my own position because I had so neutralized the company's position, right? So we had neutralized ourselves so that we were apolitical. We didn't take a stance on anything. We didn't out and out say that we were women focused. We did a lot of things that neutralized us because that's what business says we should do. That's what society had said we should do. And so that it was things like that created these anchors on me that started to suffocate me, because I knew that I felt a way about women's rights. I knew that I felt a way, I had a stance on politics. I knew these things. I discussed these things with my friends. I discussed these things at home. And so here I was with a company that felt like a heavy weight, because it could not have a position. And so for me, a rebrand had to happen because the company and me, the principal of the company, no longer aligned. And so in this stage of my life, at this half of my career, I don't have the energy, nor do I have the desire to show up as two different people. And so that's why the rebrand was absolutely necessary for me. I am Nikki. I am the company is me. So.
Yeah, and we see Kalina. Just want to say that, Nikki, that can be scary, like putting your face as the brand, because sometimes it's easy to hide behind it. You want to hide behind it for, various reasons. And so that's a very bold step that you took. So congratulations and kudos to you on that. Does anybody else want to chime in on this question before we get Kalina to come in?
It's interesting hearing Nikki's perspective, because I started off years ago with my company being my name. And I always was very regretful of doing that, because I always was like, everyone always wanted to deal with me. And it consumed my life in a way that clients would not even want to deal with any of my assistants or anyone I brought in. They're like, where's Jody? And so I remember feeling so overwhelmed by the amount of access that people had directly to me. I think this is, Nikki, we were talking about this. Remember, it's so funny how things full circle, to hear your perspective on that and to see what my experience was by branding it kind of with my name and being the face and being, keeping the business above board and having I felt like putting it in my name meant that I just was everything 1,000% of the day. And it became extremely overwhelming to me. I have played with renaming and rebranding and all the other stuff with the company. I haven't to date, because I do know that I've built something that sticks. I do know that I'm proud of what I built. I don't, at this point in time, have to even advertise. All of my business comes from referral-based, stuff. And so I chose not to rebrand the name of my business. But I will tell you that it was the vein of my existence at one point in time. It brought me to tears. Lewis is actually my ex-husband's last name. So it's not even my last name anymore. And so that was another level of, ladies, when you get married and you use your married name, we hope your marriage lasts. But if it doesn't, now it's like, it's not even my name anymore, but I stuck with it because of what I've built. And I remember my ex-husband saying, well, give me back my last name. It's stealing your business. And I'm like, I built this business off of this name, and it's going to be this name until I decide to change it. So, so it's a lot. That's a very loaded question. But Nikki, I just want to just chime in because I had the opposite experience. So it's interesting to hear your experience behind that as well.
But the thing is with that is that, here's the thing that I know now that I didn't know previously, which is even on the name. So first of all, it is harder if you're going to sell the company. Let's say this, if you're going to sell the company, it's harder to sell a company that's in your name, right? Yes. So there's that. Mm-hmm. But even selling on the name, on the brand, and creating Nikki Fagan, the brand, the Nikki Fagan way is replicable. It's systemizable, right? So they don't need me to get Nikki Fagan, to get my way, to get my process. There are trainers, there are coaches that can run my technique under this brand name. So as long as it is positioned like that up front, and so people understand which part of me they're going to actually get, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it goes back to having a clear intention about what you want to do with this company, right? Are you going to sell it eventually? You don't want it to attach your name. As you said, are you working with a team? Because if you are, then it could take away from the power of your team. So taking all of that into consideration. But I think that as a business owner, you can have your own brand too, right? So you can have your company brand, you can have your own personal brand, because you're the one that, just like we're doing today, that's going to be called upon to speak at events. You have the opportunity, we all have the opportunity to be leaders in our communities by, just as Nikki did, really standing up and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is really who I am authentically. So I think Sarah Blakely does a really good job, the founder of Spanx. She has her company. Obviously, it has a wonderful brand, but she's also developed a personal brand for herself that ties in with everything that she's doing for Spanx. So while she can sell the company, and while she can, she can also be called upon as Sarah Blakely to write books, to speak at events, to continue her brand legacy beyond Spanx.
All right, ladies, we do have some questions before we wrap up. So I just want to get some of these in. One of the questions is, what do you think will prevent women from becoming so competitive that they no longer see business as a supportive process?
Well, can I jump on that one?
Sure.
Okay, so let's be clear, because I feel like women working together and doing things together is great, but the business is business, right? We're in this business to make money. We're in this business to force some sort of change. And so competition is not innately bad, it's actually really good, So whether women will become so competitive that they can't work together, I don't think that women are like our genealogy, if that's even a word, is capable of doing that. We're just not built for that. We are built for community. We're built to nurture. We're built to help. And that's just how we're built. However, please don't believe that competition is bad. Competition is good. Competition will force you to be the better version of yourself. It will force your products to be the better version of a previous product, So when we say don't be scared of competition, don't be scared of it. It will exist. Be your authentic self. Constantly improve your products. Constantly improve your services. Constantly do different versions if you need to. Constantly revisit your marketing strategies and revisit who your audience is, your targeted demographics. Don't rule out any additional opportunity. You sell women's t-shirts, but you see a market for children's sweatpants, go for it, So competition is good. And I don't think it's going to be ever time where we're so competitive that we're like out there just like going in on women. But because I think that because of the history of women in general, we have had to come together to just have basic rights, right? So we've had to come together to just vote, to do basic things. So at this point in time, we're almost geared for the coming together, but make no mistake that, we will be in competition in some way, shape, or form. I don't think it's going to be like gladiator death match type situation.
Okay, we have Michelle White that said, I am still in the building stage of my business after having to change focus, pivoting. I find that I must keep going like the ever-ready bunny. How do you find that stillness that Nikki mentioned when there is so much to do? And then she says, I think you just answered my question. Then we have Maria Holder who asks, is it possible to carry two brands, one for the company and one for me?
Yeah, I think that I believe I answered that question earlier. Absolutely, you can. I mean, I know that because it gives you the opportunity also to be authentic with each one, just as Nikki mentioned.
All right. And then we have Claire Wren that said, I built my business on my married name, and now as a widow, I am wondering when I get married again, if changing my name will be a good idea, or double barrel my name with my old married name with my new married name.
Yeah, I would like to jump in on what Jody said. So Brechtel is my ex-husband's name, but I had already built my brand on this name, and it's also my daughter's name. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to change it. But when this new company that I formed, a corporation that I'm launching in 2022, I was like, well, I don't want to be Erica Brechtel Inc. because then I'm really tied to a man's name like for the life of my company. So I think that's an excellent question. And, I'm glad that we're having this conversation now because I was married back in 2003 when we weren't really having this conversation about keeping your own name. And especially as women, as we are becoming empowered and recognizing like our worth, that yes, I probably would have kept my family name, but we always have the opportunity to change it. And I've seen a lot of women even go from when they get married and they change their name. And there are strategies that you can put in place to make that shift happen over amount of time. And the point is to control your own narrative when you do that. I'm sure the other ladies probably have something to say about that.
I mean, I'm just piggybacking off of what you said. It's good to hear that I'm not the only one that used my married name. So that makes me feel better about myself. Ego boost. But the question is interesting. And it's no right or wrong way. It's about what is going to make you feel comfortable and what are you comfortable showing up to the world as. If you have an already established brand that people recognize and that is doing great things and you feel like you can show up in a room and speak to that brand name and not cringe. Sometimes I cringe because I had a horrible marriage. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't have what I had and you don't cringe and you feel like this is a good representation of the brand that you've built, you own it. You have built something beautiful, and that name, that brand is a part of that process. Now, if it's something that you just can't stand, or it constantly comes up, or even people are making comments like, oh, you're gonna, you really it just doesn't, you don't feel comfortable with anymore. It's perfectly fine. But I love what Erica said. It's about a strategy. The rebranding process it's about a strategy. How, when you're going to do it, what does that look like? How are you communicating that to your audience? How are you communicating that to even your internal self? And so that strategy around it, no matter what you decide, get with a strategy expert. You have 3 up here talking to you, and build a strategy to do the rebranding. So that's my answer for that.
Okay, great, ladies. We do have our next session, which is going to be the pitch competition winners and the women of the entrepreneur winners. So ladies, I want to thank you very much for this session. It has been an amazing conversation. I will ask for the attendees to make sure that you're going to the speaker pages, that you are looking up these ladies and you're making these connections to ask any further questions that you might need. We have some great responses in the chat. This was awesome, great discussion, great conversation. And so, like I said, just looking forward to connecting with you guys some more. You all have been amazing. You're wrapping up our day of our last panel and speaker portion. And so now we're just going to head on out to the schedule and do the pitch competition winners as well as the female entrepreneur of the award winner. And then we're going to do some prizes and then some wrap up and close. But do not leave, because from 5 to 7, we will be doing a vendor market. So you can go visit the vendors, check out their booths, connect with them. And then we'll also be doing some speed dating. So some speed networking, kind of like speed dating. We did it on the brunch on Sunday, and it was very a useful part of the event. Everyone loved it. And so I'm looking forward to doing a deeper dive and talking to you guys during this speed networking portion. So thank you, ladies, again for accepting. Thank you, Erica, our international speaker on this panel. And you guys have done a great job. So talk to you guys later. Don't forget to join us for the pitch competition winners and the other winners. Okay. Thanks, ladies.
Thank
Have
you.
a great one. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.